Thank you, Michelle. Hey, I always wanted a blended service, and from Ron and with the horn and the praise that we get on the video, and then Michelle brings home a good traditional hymn. I'm getting it. And so that's good stuff. If you will, turn to Luke, the 12th chapter, although we're going to look a little bit at 11 perhaps. And, I was going to do a Super Bowl one and kind of go topical, and then I started to read Luke 12, and I thought, I'll stick with Luke 12 instead. Luke 12 is a tough one. Luke 11 is a really tough. Luke 11 used to be one of my favorites, and it still is. But, man, he goes on the attack, Jesus does, on the Pharisee in that chapter. And he's not making any friends. Jesus is not going to make, he's not going to make, he wasn't in the business of making anybody feel really good in Luke 11. And so as a matter of fact, it even says in Luke 11, it says, where is it at? Well, nonetheless, they said, hey, did you know you were offending us? Right there in 45, Luke 11:45, it says, one of the experts in the law answered him, Teacher, when you say these things, you insult us also. Well, that was the whole point. So I guess that Jesus thought, well, you know what, I'm doing pretty good then. Nonetheless, he calls them hypocrites and everything else, but he tells the truth. But then he shifts gears. And I don't know about you, before we go to shifting of gears, one of the things I've always heard from people who don't go to church is that the church is full of, there we go, hypocrites. There we go. I guess you've heard it too, huh? All right? Well, my normal response is, well, yep, you are absolutely right. It is full of hypocrites, for that matter, and of which I'm one of the worst. And so, but I'm a forgiven one, and I'm trying to work my way out of it. I guess the church is full of recovering hypocrites. Maybe that's what we can say next time somebody says that to us. And so, well, Jesus looked at the church of his day, and he said the exact same things. He called them out on it. And then he turns to his disciples and deals with them on that very important subject. Obviously, Jesus knew the hypocrisy was going to be an issue. And so he deals with his disciples. We're his disciples now. And how we live our lives is very important as well. He looked at the Pharisee and he said, not my cup. It says 2020, very bad. Would not recommend. Not good. Not good. But he would look at, Jesus says, when he talks about the Pharisee, he talks about how the outside of the cup looks really nice and clean. And that's what he was talking about with the Pharisees. Their lives on the outside looked really nice, really clean, really religious, all the right things, and it looked really good. But he said, but look inside the cup, and it's not so clean. It's dirty. And so that's what he was comparing them to. Their outside looked really good, but their inside, their heart, looked really bad. And so he turns to his disciples there in Luke 12. And he starts to prepare them for a day ahead, for the days ahead. And he warns them to not be like the Pharisees. The yeast of hypocrisy is what he talks about. And I'm not a cook. I never have been, never will be. I'm an eater, but not a cook. All right? Today's the second biggest eating day of the entire year. And so that's good for business in supermarket. But I don't know anything about yeast, but I know a little bit of yeast goes a long, long way. And a little bit of yeast in there spreads out. And that is what he's talking about here as he addresses his disciples. Now, what you might find interesting, what I found interesting, I looked at 12. Well, first of all, let's go back. Let's take the back of the bulletin and let's talk about hypocrisy. You know, we can say hypocrisy is is looking like one thing and being another. That's the simple one that I would do if I didn't want to keep you here until about 12:30. Okay? But we're going to go a little deeper than that. We're going to look at the back, well, not the back of your bulletin, on the side of your bulletin. And it has hypocrisy is conformity to the values and expectations of someone else. In other words, we're hypocritical because of some other person's values. Hypocrisy is bowing to the idol of other people's values, which are not really your own. Think about that. Hypocrisy is dyeing our hair green if the group we are part of has defined spirituality as having green hair. Knowing in our hearts that green hair has nothing to do with godliness. I don't think anyway. Hypocrisy adjusts and accommodates their appearance to what people think or feel. Hypocrisy is conformity to the values and expectations of someone else. It's also this. Hypocrisy is an inconsistency. It's inconsistent. Hypocrisy is the discrepancy, the difference between what appears and what is. Between the way things seem that they are and the way they really are. The Pharisees were great because they appeared to be righteous on the outside, didn't they? But in reality, they were wicked. They were adding things to them and making it difficult for people to come to God. So on the outside, they looked really good. But on the inside, not so much. Hypocrisy is a deliberate deception. Hypocrisy is deliberately appearing to be what we are not. It's not accidental, but it's purposeful. Hypocrisy is a charade. It's a show. Appearance does not match reality, and it's done deliberately. You choose to be a hypocrite. I choose to be a hypocrite. I choose to look one way here, but be another way there. And it's a deliberate deception with either a positive or negative motivation. We need to pay attention to that one because that's where the disciples are going. Generally speaking, for the most part, we're hypocritical either to achieve men's praise or to avoid their persecution. And the last point is key. That's what's important to understanding the difference between the hypocrisy of the Pharisee. Jesus got the Pharisee for one kind of hypocrisy. He's going to warn the disciples of another type. People are deliberately hypocritical. I just said that. They have a goal in mind. For the Pharisee, that goal was positive. They were hypocritical so that they could receive the praise of men. But for the disciples, the motivation to be hypocritical would have been negative. To avoid the persecution of those who hated true righteousness, who would reject and crucify Jesus the Messiah, and who would also persecute and kill many of the disciples. And so their side of it was negative. They were trying to avoid something by looking one way. And according to today, Tom Brady, he'll take it, fake it to the guy coming in. I have to make some sort of football. Right? He'll take it to the guy coming in, and he'll pull it back, and then he'll come back, and he'll throw it pass. Well, it's the deception that it freezes the linebacker, right? So he takes it, and so everybody stops and thinks maybe they're going to run the ball. And then he pulls it out and he throws the ball. That's what hypocrisy is. We say, hey, look, we're going to do this, but instead we do that. We say we are this, but we are that. That's hypocrisy. And hey. All right? Let's get off of our high horse today. Weird. I know you're sitting there, but I'm none of these things. I'm really good. No, you're really bad, just like me. All right? But that's okay. It's okay. We're going to work through that as well. And of course, the last one is this. I don't even know if I have it on your bulletin. Hypocrisy is sin. It's just sin. That's how there is to it. Yeah, we work our way to it. And now let's keep going. on Luke 12 now. Luke 12. We'll move quicker then. Meanwhile, verse 12, chapter 12, verse 1. Meanwhile, when a crowd of many thousands had gathered, so that they were trampling on one another, Jesus began to speak first to his disciples, saying, be on your guard against the yeast of the Pharisee, which is hypocrisy. Okay, so what I want to kind of point out to you here is the crowd. Have you ever been in a mob? Have you ever been in a crowd that you thought to yourself, hey, this is getting out of control. This is too big. You ever been there? Ever been there, safe? Yeah, it's scary. I've been there a couple of times. Don't want to go back there. It is frightening because you don't have control, do you? I mean, this mob can do anything it wants to do, and you don't have any power to stop it. Well, we've seen that recently, right? Unfortunately, in more than one occasion. And this is how many? What did it say? Thousands? A crowd of many thousands. Who knows how much that is? But that's a lot of people. And so there's a big crowd, and sometimes those crowds get a little out of hand. And Jesus is going to teach his disciples, because they're going to be running into a mob and a crowd here before too long, and they're going to be wanting to take the life of Jesus, and they're going to have to deal with that. I mean, that's just a piece of what he's teaching. But that certainly is something that he's teaching. Crowd is really important. And then I've already kind of spoke to the yeast of the Pharisee. Just a little bit of it goes a long way. What Jesus, when Peter was a little bit hypocritical there in the book of Acts, Paul visits him, calls him out on it. Because Paul knew and understood what Jesus knew and understood is that a little bit of hypocrisy can grow and become a devastating effect in the life of the body of believers and in the life of believers in general. And so Paul calls Peter out. Peter responds rightly, and the church is better for it. Jesus is warning his disciples here with this mob all around, stepping on top of each other. I love that part of Luke's description. And so he's sort of warning them that, hey, a little bit of yeast, a little bit of hypocrisy is like yeast that will grow and be like a cancer in your life or in the church's life. And so he warns them not to be that way. He spends a lot of time with this. And so he deals with it in the next few verses. Think about it from that perspective. That's what I want you to do this morning. He's teaching disciples in the midst of a great crowd. He says there is nothing. So the first thing I want to get is that hypocrisy is futile. It makes no sense to be a hypocrite. That's what Jesus is saying here in the next verse. The next two verses. Because he says this, there is nothing concealed that will not be disclosed, or hidden that will not be made known. What you have said in the dark will be heard in the daylight, and what you have whispered in the ear in the inner rooms will be proclaimed from the roofs. You are believers. Kind of summarizing the deal here is Jesus' meaning would be something like this. Hypocrisy, hiding the truth, is futile because the truth cannot and will not be concealed for long. The hypocrisy about which the disciples were being warned is that of seeking to conceal the gospel which they had believed. To conceal their discipleship, Jesus tells them that the gospel is going to be proclaimed publicly. It cannot be concealed. It cannot be hidden here. And you are a disciple. He's talking to people who believe, who are going to face a mob, who are going to face persecution, who are going to be, and we know it, killed for their belief somewhere down the road. And he is saying, look, don't get quiet, because no matter what you say and or do, the good news is going to come out. or the fact that it's going to be for real. So it is a waste of time. Maybe that's a better word. Hypocrisy is a waste of time, because what is said in the darkness will come out in the light. I do like, and I didn't think about it until I said it earlier, but I do like the thought of the church, or that myself and believers being recovering hypocrites. We all want to be liked. And we all want to be in the right place. And the world around us, doesn't exactly like the things of Jesus. And so we're, like the disciples, we're going to be in places that are difficult. And we're going to need to be bold. And we're going to not need to shrink back, because the truth of who we are should come out in the long run. Or the truth of the gospel is certainly going to come out in the long run. Verse 4. Isn't Jesus a great teacher? I love the way he says things like, and what you have whispered in the ear, in the inner rooms, will be proclaimed from the roofs. And then he says, I tell you, my friends, do not be afraid of those who kill the body, and after that can do no more. That's an interesting concept. We're more chewing on a little bit, maybe later on. But I will show you whom you should fear. Fear him who, after the killing of the body, has the power to throw you into hell. Yes, I tell you, fear him. And then he says, that sounds awful negative, but it's the awful truth. He says, are not 5 sparrows sold for 2 pennies? Yet not one of them is forgotten by God. Indeed, the very hairs of your head are all numbered. Don't be afraid. You are worth more than many sparrows. Hypocrisy deals with our fears. We fear the crowd. We fear the people around us. But Jesus says here, fear me, fear God. Put a healthy respect in God who can send you to hell. But also, and that, you know what, that is the truth. He can. And that's just the truth that needs to be spoken. And we need to come to that realization. And then Jesus also says, though, too, but think of me who loves you as much as a sparrow. We go to Central Market really early in the morning. And the birds are, and they're not sparrows, they're those old blackbirds. I had a machine gun BB gun, I'd take them out. Anyway, they drive me crazy. That's a whole other thought. Maybe I need to seek repentance on blackbird's butt. But anyway, I think about a bird and just how many there are and how seemingly insignificant they are to us. But Jesus says, don't fear men who can only take your life. Fear me who loves you, who knows, listen, who knows and has numbered every hair on your head.
Amen.
Who loves you and wants you to know him. Why do we fear men when we have such a good, loving God that has promised over again in Scripture to take care of us? He says, he deals with their fears. He knows they're afraid. He knows they're going to be afraid. He knows that you and I are going to be fearful of the response of the people around us. And he says, don't worry about people who can merely take your life. Might I don't worry about people who can only take away this or that. But fear and respect and love, and pay attention to the one who loves you, who cares about what seems to be insignificant bird and loves you 100 million times more. So he's teaching in the midst of this crowd. Then the next one is this. verse 8. Says this. I tell you, whoever acknowledges me before men, the Son of Man, will also acknowledge him before the angels of God. But he who disowns me before men will be disowned before the angels of God. And everyone who speaks a word against the Son of Man will be forgiven. But anyone who blasphemes against the Holy Spirit will not be forgiven. That blasphemy against the Holy Spirit is just denying God, not accepting His love that was given on the cross. He's reassuring them, or he's reminding them. There's going to come a moment of truth where they're going to have to acknowledge God. Think about the book of Acts. Just open up this afternoon the book of Acts, also written by Luke, by the way, and read the times over and over again. Peter, Paul, John, people thrown in jail for proclaiming the good news. They didn't fear man who could only kill them. They feared and respected God who loved them. The good news. The good news doesn't go out perhaps even like it used to, but the good news doesn't go out much anymore because of fear of what people might say if you actually say something. You can say God, I've always said this, you say God on TV, that's no big deal. But you say the name Jesus on TV and you have stirred the pot. You say God at work. You say, oh, I believe in God. That's cool. That's all right. Everybody believes in God. Whatever God that happens to be. But when you say you believe in Jesus, that's a whole other ballgame. And that's what these guys are going. And this is what Jesus is talking to them about. Proclaiming Him before men. And I believe that that's a very important part when it comes to baptism. And we all, you know what, I know that baptism doesn't save you, but baptism is the moment when you proclaim, you begin your proclamation of the good news by telling people that you know and you love Jesus. It's a sign of obedience to God. And in proclaiming before men, I always tell whoever it is that I baptize, you will preach the greatest message today because you will be proclaiming the death, burial, and resurrection of the Lord. That's proclaiming Him before men. When we hide that, or we go undercover, and Jesus says that's not going to work. He's not talking about losing your salvation. He's just talking about people who probably never have it. No, people who are not going to proclaim it. That's definitely a hypocrisy that deals within the church today, that we're undercover Christians. They were not going to have that choice. The disciples were not going to have that choice. And really, we don't